Where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead to share with the worms that gather in the darkness and surround the world with the power of their lives, while from the dim lit halls of other places forms that never could be writhe for the impatience of the few who have never seen or been seen. In the black water with the sun shining at midnight, those fruit shall come ripe, and in the darkness of that which is golden shall split open to reveal the revelation of the fatal softness in the earth. The shadows of the abyss are like the petals of a monstrous flower that shall blossom within the skull and expand the mind beyond what any man can bear. Let's talk about Annihilation. Annihilation is the first volume of the Southern Reach trilogy. However, it's soon to be the Southern Reach cycle, the Southern Reach quartet. The point is, Jeff Vandermeer is publishing a fourth novel in this series 10 years after the original trilogy was released. These three books were written as one work, though they are distinct and separate entities, but were published in very quick succession over the course of less than a year, in the year 2014, and they were what brought Jeff Vandermeer, I would say, into the upper echelon of notoriety for writers working in genre fiction today. He had been around for a long time before that, writing novels, in mostly in the world ambergris, if I'm remembering right. I think that's what the universe of those early novels is called. It's also the name of one of them, but haven't read any of them. I have a couple of them, just haven't read them. I'm bad at reading. I don't know if you guys have caught on to that generally I'm not good at reading. But when I worked at Half Price Books, I started working there like 2 years after these books came out, and people started reading them that I worked with, and everybody loved them. Every single person that I knew that read them loved them. And there were some people that I knew that read them who loved them, whose opinion I trusted, and there were people who read them who loved them, whose opinion I didn't trust. And the description of them reminded me a lot of Stalker, the film by Andrei Tarkovsky, and Roadside Picnic, the novel that it's based upon. And I love Stalker. It was intriguing, but with hesitation, right? Because I think, okay, so this seems like something that it could be up my alley, but could it be derivative? You know, whatever. I don't usually like series very much. I don't finish them very often, but this is a short series. It's a trilogy. The whole thing is, like 800, 900 pages long. It has been collected in a single volume before. So I got the first one and I read it, and it blew me away, this book, Annihilation. And I read the other two pretty quickly in succession. This was in 2017, a period when I wasn't reading very much, even less than I read now, honestly. There's something about working at the bookstore that made you not read. I don't know. There's something to that. But these quickly became among my favorite books. And if I had to single out one historically that I think was my favorite, I think it was Annihilation. Annihilation is the shortest one. It's the most immediate and snappy and, engrossing. It goes by really quickly. It's like, 200 pages, like, not even, right? Yeah, just shy of 200 pages, and you can read it in one sitting easily. You can burn through it in like three hours probably. It also became more well known a couple years after that when they made a film out of it. Alex Garland adapted and directed it. Alex Garland, of Ex Machina, and more recently Civil War, and back in the day he wrote like 28 Days Later. He made a movie out of it starring Natalie Portman that is good, though I feel like I have a complicated relationship with. It feels, if I'm going to be more favorable, like it really is its own thing. If I wanted to be less favorable, I would compare it maybe to Zack Snyder's Watchmen, a movie that meticulously recreates the visual aspects of the comic book that it's based upon, but seems to have absolutely no idea what the point of the story is. It's not that extreme. I think that Annihilation is a really beautiful movie in a lot of ways, but it's like very clearly Annihilation the movie and Annihilation the book and the Southern Reach trilogy are about different things, which is, I struggle with that as a person who really likes the books a lot, that the movie is just not about what the books are about, but it has all the sort of window dressing. I'm going to give kind of like a high-level overview of this book. Then I'm going to talk about why I like these books so much. I'm going to try and stick to mostly this one. I'm going to do a more kind of in-depth retrospective at the end when I get to the third one. So we'll talk a brief synopsis of this, then we'll talk about why I love this book so much. Then we'll go into kind of spoilery territory and talk more in depth about the plot and choices and things of that nature. And so that section you can skip if you haven't read them. Unless you don't care about, getting spoiled or whatever. But you should, at least a little bit. I do think that, like, good things can't truly be spoiled, but I think that one of the things that is great about this series is how it is a sort of modern take on, there's a lot of the same sort of themes of Lovecraft that are about sort of like unknowable horror, incomprehensible mystery, and the story goes in a lot of really fascinating and interesting and unexpected directions, and I think that it is a real joy and treat to get to experience those things progressively as a reader, reading the book, for what it's worth. So, Annihilation is the first person recollection of a biologist who is otherwise unnamed, who is a member of the 12th expedition into a place that is referred to as Area X. At some time, a couple decades earlier, before the action of the book, something happened here on this coastline in the United States, southern coast, eastern seaboard. something happened here on this coastline where there's a lighthouse in a small town village, and no one really knows what happened and why, or it's very unclear. But this border seemed to appear, and they don't understand why, and so they have found a way to get inside of it, and they send expeditions in to explore this area X, and try to figure out what's happening and why. And the narrator is a member of this team for the 12th expedition, who narrates the story it's like diegetically written in the form of like journal entries, as she tells what happens to the 12th expedition to enter Area X. That's the high level plot summary for Annihilation. So first, let me talk about some more kind of like boring to me aspects of praise about this book in Vandermeer. I think that Vandermeer is... Let me just like do some cataloging here and make sure that I'm not telling tales out of class. But I can't think of anybody. I think he is my favorite living writer of genre fiction. Horror, science fiction, his stuff kind of bridges both, He just really, like, not only does he write stories that have things in them that really compel me and I really love, but he's just a fantastic writer on a technical sentence level. I'm reading this other book right now that I'm not going to get too into talking about, but it's a thing that caught my attention and I'm reading and I'm intrigued by, and I'm not enjoying it. But it was like going from reading Vandermeer to reading this other book. I was like, man, like, Jeff Vandermeer is really good at writing. Just like at a sentence level. He really knows how to craft language in a way to evoke image in such a captivating way that is still very readable and engrossing while also being elegant, which is a very, very difficult line to kind of tread. At the same time, I feel like his characters are so rich, and that's like something that I really... These are two of the biggest issues that I usually have with genre writers, even ones that I like William Gibson. I think that his characters are kind of weak. In the I've only read 2 of his books now, but like his characters just feel a little flat, a little stale. It feels like the characters are there to serve the plot and not the other way around, which I think is a mistake. I think you have to have the plot serve the characters. The characters are the core of any story, my opinion. Vandermeer just he's really... I can't think of anybody else who's working in that caliber that I've read. And I've tried to read a lot of popular, well-liked science fiction and fantasy, and I've enjoyed some of it. I haven't enjoyed others. I read 2 of the Expanse books, right? The James S.A. Comey, which is a pseudonym. But those books, fun plot, characters are okay, and the writing is serviceable, right? I tried to read Jim Butcher, the fucking Dresden Files. People jizz in their pants for those fucking books, and I was like, this is some Sci-Fi Channel original movie ass shit. It's like a theater kid energy kind of nerd thing that I really struggle with as someone who was always more of like a like DIY kind of. There's like, this isn't real, but in my mind it's kind of like there are like theater queer kids and there are like punk rock queer kids, and I was definitely the latter. That I was in DIY spaces doing more kind of like rough around the edges type of things. I was never a fan of theater, musical theater, and Dresden Files just feels like that to me, and it gives me the ick a little bit. I read The Three Body Problem, the first one. I have the other two. I liked it quite a bit, but it's like, it just wasn't enough to get me to keep going. I got like a little ways into the second one and just kind of petered out. And that one I liked better than most. I read N.K. Jemisin, the trilogy, not the first trilogy, but the second one that I can't remember the name of. I read 2 of the 3, and she was much better than most. She's a good writer on a sentence level, but I didn't feel that compelled by the characters or the plot. I mean, the world was interesting, but it wasn't enough to hold everything up. And so all of this is just to say that, like, Jeff Vandermeer feels like the complete package to me. He's got really fascinating stories to tell, starring very compelling, very rich characters, and he does so very elegantly. That is the package, right? Now, on a more personal level of why I think that the things that appeal to us personally are usually not the quality of the writing. The quality of the writing is more like the seasoning, maybe. It's just something that makes it go down easier, I think. If without it, it'll still be rough around the edges, but it's swallowable, right? And so Jeff Vandermeer seems very interested. I'd say that one theme that I see a lot with his stories are ecology, the natural world. There's a lot of sort of I wouldn't even say allegory. It's just explicitly. I mean, in Southern Reach, maybe more of an allegory, but I think it's pretty explicitly just about global warming, pollution, the way that human beings are destroying the natural world. It's a very strong topic throughout his work that I've read. And there is also this sort of like very surreal, sort of mysterious compulsion to everything. Now, if you know me, I mean, watching me talk about shit, or you know me IRL, hi, you know that is my jiggity jam. I love me some mysterious shit. I love rabbit holes. I love being compelled by unnatural forces. All very kind of Lovecraftian in their own way, but also, noir, I think, taps into that a lot. I think that David Lynch is like one of the great sort of people who has worked in that realm a lot. You could say that about almost every major movie he's made, right? Like, he's got a few that are not that, you know, like Dune or Elephant Man or Straight Story or Wild at Heart, but most of the rest of them live within that sort of like noirish, mystery, surreal, compelling, being compelled by forces, being confronted by unknowable, strange things, you know, like the scene where the stranger comes to Bill Pullman at the party in Lost Highway is like maybe my favorite scene of any movie ever. It's just perfect. It is just a perfect thing. And I find that same thing in the works of like Haruki Murakami. I'm not gonna say it like that. I find that the same thing in the works of like Murakami, who frequently has characters do a very similar thing where they sort of, and it's, I like to make fun of it because it's so, he does it so much, but I can't deny that it gets to me where it's like a strange thing, a strange guy or something will sort of appear, and then strange things will happen, and then the strange guy will be like, that was a strange thing that just happened. Don't you think that was such a strange thing that just happened? Huh, and then just kind of like disappears. I eat that shit for breakfast. It's so good. There's something so compelling to me about a sort of surreal existential mystery that is compelled by some sort of outside force that can't be explained. Be that, you know, like a alien or some sort of extraterrestrial, a non-human entity, or be that like fate, or be that like horniness. That's a great one. Like I have a weakness for movies and stories about people who are deeply horny and compelled. I think like a great fusion of both of these ideas is David Robert Mitchell's film Under the Silver Lake, starring Andrew Garfield, a modern classic as far as I'm concerned, a movie that a lot of people didn't see because it got kind of undersold, but I love that movie, and it is a guy who is desperately horny getting sucked into a weird, surreal, conspiratorial underworld that's like half Thomas Pynchon and like half David Lynch. Anyways, Jeff, he really knows how to build these compelling worlds filled with delectable mysteries that just set my mind on fire. And I feel so excited reading him because it's like a little door opens in my mind and all of these ideas are waiting there for me on the other side. It's like the key to get into some weird shit. I think that if this is enough to compel you, you should really just like read the book. Read all three of them. I think you need to, like, I notice a lot. I was looking on Goodreads and I saw that there were a lot of people that I follow in there that read this one and didn't read the other two. Wrong. Foul on the play. You gotta read all three of them. They really were written as one thing. It is one total package. If you only read this, then you are, first of all, only reading like 20% of the whole thing, because this one's shorter than the other two. But it's really like only hearing one side of a conversation if you only read the first book in this series. So I really implore you should read them. And then if you have read it, stick around for what I have to say next. Otherwise, turn the video off now. Thank you. Have a good night. So, I want to talk about the crazy shit that happens in this book, like in detail, by spoiling it. So, if you've read it before, you know, but if not, so in the book they come into Area X. Things are fucking weird from pretty much the jump, and early on they discover this thing in the ground, in this clearing, that's like a stone circle above the ground that has like an entrance into it that leads into a stairway that goes down. And they decide to start exploring it. And it goes down for ever, basically. And in it, on the walls, are writing. And it's the writing that I dictated off camera at the beginning of the video. But the writing is made out of living organisms on the wall, a sort of lichen mixed with tiny parasitic creatures that look like little hands, they're described as looking like. And they realize that there is something in this stairwell with them, and that it is what is writing this on the wall. And this sort of knowledge begins to destroy the cohesion of the group. At the same time, we start learning more about the biologist's background. Her husband had been a member of the previous expedition, and they had left and then been gone, and she had assumed that he was dead. And then, like, a year later, he just appeared. The people who had been on the expedition just spontaneously appeared in their homes, but had no memory of how they had gotten there, and had no memory of basically their entire time in Area X, and then all of them had cancer, and then all of them died. I feel very compelled by these things. This idea that there is this area that is sort of contaminated by something that is clearly alien, right? Something that is not human, not of Earth, but isn't E.T., you know? It's not space bugs or whatever. It is some other thing that we can't understand or comprehend. And it is, I think in the movie, Alex Garland really wants to, like, explain it. He wants to be like, oh, it's an alien that's, like, synthesizing, it's taking what's here and changing it. There's a part where he talks about how it, like, it's refracting things like how light does, and it's rewriting DNA, blah, 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 blah. It's never so black and white in the book. I mean, I think that there is an element of truth there, that there is this entity that is changing the world around it. But it feels very, like, amoral in the sense of, like, it's, like, morality is very human. And this is something that is very animalistic. It is not malicious. It is simply just changing things. Deeply compelling. Deeply, like, strange and upsetting and beautiful. And I think that, like, when you think about how, like, we as people are changing the world around us, destroying things, changing things irreversibly, it doesn't have that sort of animalistic neutrality to it. You know, the world is being destroyed by people who know what they are doing and are choosing to do it anyways because money, you know, generally, most of the time. I think that change is something that's really hard and complex, and one of the greatest struggles that human beings have to grapple with is that everything is always changing. We are always changing. And there is an inherent resistance to change in us, to some degree, always. You know, there are some people who like change more than others. I think I'm one of those people. I like change more than others. But I still struggle with it. Everyone does. And there's something really fascinating about how Area X captures this sort of duality of the change being both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And it's terrifying, perhaps even more so because it is so clinical. There's no sort of evil oil tycoon for us to shake our fists at. It's not that simple. I think that one of the reasons it's really unfortunate that it seems like a lot of people only read this first one and don't read the rest is because this book is mostly the hook, you know, for the rest of it. For what this story is really about. It is about change in a lot of ways, overall. But I think that some people probably read this and think, well, I don't necessarily want to have things explained to me. I don't want to understand what's happening. I understand that sentiment. But I think that it's wrong, because I think that understanding is necessary to glean what the purpose of this whole story is. But I'm not going to get too into that now, because I want to, first of all, I want to wait until it's fresh in my mind. It's been 7 years since I read these books. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself and start talking about the end as though I remember it so freshly. I think that there's a lot of really beautiful things too in this book. I really, this time reading it, I remembered the first time I read it feeling a lot of, let's say, kinship with the biologist, the narrator of the book. She's a very solitary person, and, her sort of remembrances of her marriage are ones of solitude. And, she doesn't, she's a true introvert. She doesn't seem like she is able to relate to human beings at all. And that's what makes her a great biologist, because she is more interested in tide pools than she is in human beings. It's also what makes her the perfect person to go to Area X. And I felt outside of things like that when I read this book the first time. Now, reading it, I see how I was wrong. But I also understand why it felt that way for me at the time. the relationship that I was in and how I felt in that relationship, and the things I was doing with my life, the people I was spending my time with, and the things I was doing with my time, I think it makes sense that I felt isolated, that I felt alone, that I felt like unknowable, inscrutable. I think one of the great gifts that the pandemic gave me, and my life as it was kind of crumbling at the same time, I had to kind of build things back, and I realized that this sort of image I had crafted for myself of myself as this sort of dejected loner, lone wolf kind of guy was not true. I realized that I'm not even an introvert. I think I may have been at one point, and it may have just changed over time, but I'm definitely not an introvert, not anymore. I think that was really interesting and beneficial for me to have the experience of reading this book again when my life is very different, and seeing how my perception of myself has changed and how I relate to the biologist. And the biologist is a great character. She's very compelling, very clinical, very well conceived, because she's so understated, I feel. And this book is fascinating because it's written from the first person. We get to really be inside of her. And but there is no sort of dramatic irony then, because we are only seeing things through her eyes. The later books are not written in the first person, or at least the second one's not. I don't remember. The second book's not written in the first person, and so it's interesting to see how he uses voice in that way to either pull us in close as a way to kind of put the horse blinders on, versus in the second one when we pull back and we can see things more sort of objectively rather than subjectively. Annihilation, Southern Reach trilogy is one of my favorites. I'm really excited for the new one. It's coming out in October, so I want to make sure I get through all three of them before then. I'm like almost halfway through Authority, the second one. So expect a video for that in the near future. And the third one as well. And I've got another thing cooking as well, like I alluded to earlier. We'll see how long that takes. The channel got monetized recently. I was accepted as a YouTube partner. How exciting. We're fast-tracked on the road to 1,000 subscribers. That's fucking crazy. Feels like, like when I started posting book videos 3 years ago, I had like 150-ish subscribers that I had just sort of accumulated passively over the years with all the random crap that I'd posted. And when I moved, shortly after I moved in the fall of 2022, I passed 500. And now we're just shy of 800. It's pretty crazy. I know it's kind of small potatoes compared to many other things on YouTube, but for me, I am impressed that so many of you have decided to stick around despite the chaos and irregularity that is this channel. So thank you for doing that. I've got a idea for a series of shorter videos I'm going to do when we get closer to 1,000. I also might do it just for my birthday, which is coming up here in 2 months from now. God knows when I'll get this edited and posted. It took me a month to edit that fucking William Gibson video, so hopefully not a month. Hopefully it isn't like August or late July by the time I'm shooting this. I'm shooting this on Juneteenth at like 1 in the morning. I'm rambling. I'm sorry.